This is your math gal, Julie Harland. Please visit my website at yourmathgal.com, where all of my videos are organized by topic. This is example 3 of solving basic equations that contain fractions. This one's a little bit different because we have just a single fraction on the left where x is in the numerator and a 4 is in the denominator. Now, before we do this problem, you might be able to do this problem in your head because you could think about it as this. What divided by 4 is negative 6? And some of you might know what that is. In fact, if it was what divided by 4 is 6, my guess is that one it wouldn't be too difficult because it's 24 divided by 4 equals positive 6. So that's a little hint. So sometimes you could look at these problems and figure out the answer without doing algebra. But it's nice to have algebra to fall back on if you can't do it in your head, certainly. So what's one way of dealing with this? There are a few ways of doing this problem. One is you could say, well, I've got x divided by 4. So in order to undo that, we could multiply by 4. Okay, so that's one way of thinking about it. And when you do that, we get x equals negative 24. Okay, so if you just have x divided by some number, to undo it, you multiply by that number because that way it will cancel. All right, so that's method 1. Now the second method is going to look exactly the same, but it's the way you think about it that's slightly different. You could say, well, I have an equation with a fraction in it, so I'm going to multiply both sides by the least common denominator. And there is only one denominator, 4, right? Because this negative 6 is a whole number, so you can think of that as negative 6 over 1. So the least common denominator is 4, and so again, it looks the same, but you see how the way I thought about the problem was a little bit different? We get x equals negative 24 again. Okay, so here, first way, you're undoing the division by multiplying both sides by 4. Second way, you're multiplying both sides by the least common denominator. Well, it looks exactly the same. Last way, x over 4. Actually, this isn't the last way. This is just another way. There's like probably at least a couple more ways to do this. When you have x over 4, you could think of this as 1/4 times 4. You don't see it, but there's an invisible 1 in front of that x. So if you have 1/4 x, that's really could be written without that time sign there. You have 1/4 x equals negative 6, and then you could multiply both sides by the reciprocal, right, of the coefficient. So if you have 1/4, the reciprocal is 4 over 1. You multiply both sides by 4 over 1. And of course, that's negative 24 divided by 1, which again is just x equals negative 24. So that's the third way. If you have seen proportions before, x over 4 equals negative 6 can be written like this. So some of you may have learned about proportions. A lot of teachers don't like to show their students this because they think they confuse it on problems they can't do it with. But if you do know about proportions, if you multiply those two numbers together, it only works if you have one fraction equaling another fraction. If you multiply those together, x times 1, you get the same thing as if you multiply those numbers together. So that would be a fourth way to do it. But if you're not really up on proportions, I wouldn't suggest you do this until you really understand proportions a little bit better. So, like I said, there's 4 ways of getting our answer. So no matter how you do it, we keep getting x equals negative 24, which some of you originally might have noticed that would be it just visually looking at the problem. What divided by 4 is negative 6? You know it's got to be a negative number, and it's 24 because 24 divided by 4 is 6. All right, let's go ahead and check this. This is your math gal, Julie Harland. Please visit my website at yourmathgal.com, where all of my videos are organized by topic.